Hello and welcome everyone to lesson 12 in this Chess Beginner to Winner series, in which we take you from absolute chess beginner to winning your first tournament games and beyond. And today I'm going to talk about extra pawn endgames. So let's say you're playing a game of chess and you've traded all the material off and you have an extra pawn in the end game. So this example here, it's white's turn to move. And what would you do to try and go for the win in this position? If we take a look at this, it looks like white is winning here, but you kind of have to have experience in this and know how to proceed to get that win. So one interesting thing we look at here is that white has two pawns on the queen side over here, but we have this one black pawn which is kind of freezing both of these white pawns. This technique can be called a deep freeze sometimes, or just freezing the pawns. But anyway, you put this one pawn here when the pawn in front of it has pushed forward and the other pawn is backwards here. So the one pawn kind of holds off the two extra pawns here. The two pawns. So white's move here, it looks like king to e4 will press forward trying to go up here and attack this pawn. So of course here black should go ahead and try and stop white from making progress because black doesn't want white to get in here and be able to pick off this pawn and then push his pawn forward, or come over here and pick off this pawn. But white's advantage is this extra pawn here, so he needs to find a way to get his pawn, his extra pawn moving over here. So he just continues over towards these pawns, and black moves this way as well to keep white from being able to come up and just eat this pawn here on b5. So now, if white would just move back over, the game would just go back and forth and end in a draw. And so we want to avoid that and go for the win. So we head back over here. Black moves over with us, but now we go down here, because this black pawn is preventing us from going to c4, of course. So we move over here and get ready to push this pawn forward. So now black has an option. He could go down here after this pawn, but after this move, black would have to take care of this. Otherwise, this pawn will just march up here. And after capture, white has to keep an eye on this pawn, of course, to prevent it from promoting. But he can go ahead and push forward here. So now white would promote in 3 moves, and it would take black 1, 2, capturing this pawn, 3 to move out of the way, then 4, 5, 6, 7 moves before he would even be able to promote his pawn over here. So realizing that it would be too late to try and promote his pawn, black has to go back over to the queen side to stop this pawn from moving forward. But now white can move up here and cut the king off, because the king cannot move here or here. If the pawn would try and move forward, it could just be captured. And then, I'll show you that example. So if instead of moving up, the pawn just pushed forward, then we would just have a capture, of course. And if this pawn tried to jump over here and capture, now the king has time to protect it. And this will kind of lead to the main line. So I'll go back to this. So after king to b4, The king tries to go up in front of this pawn. White captures. The king goes in front of the pawn to try and stop this passed pawn. Now white heads back over towards the center. And we have this here. So black is blocking this passed pawn, but now white can just either immediately go after these pawns, or he could try and push that pawn forward to see if black will make a mistake. But as long as black stays in front of the pawn and then moves straight back here, white pushes forward and the king gets in front. Well, now white can just go ahead and leave this pawn to be captured, and that will give white time, while black is capturing this, to jump over here and pick off this black pawn and then move up and control the queening square. So here the white king cuts off the black king from controlling this queening square, and the pawn can start pushing forward here. And then after white moves out of the way, of course, or excuse me, after the white king moves out of the way, the king will promote to a queen and have an easy win here. As we learned in our earlier lessons on king and queen versus lone king, you'll be able to easily checkmate here. All right, so I'll set up another position here before I end this video. Let's see here. Let's say that white has, I don't know, 3 pawns here, and black has 2, and then, I don't know, over here, the pawns are even. Well, a lot can happen here. Let's say the kings are in the center. Now here, if it's white's turn, once again, we see white is in the lead here. The material is ahead 1 pawn for white. So what does white do here to continue forward? Well, generally, when you have multiple pawns on the board, no other pieces, the side with that extra pawn should be winning unless the pawns are doubled up and can be stopped with a lesser number of pawns. So when all the pawns are side by side, usually you want to push the unopposed pawn, and I may have mentioned that before in some of the videos. So it looks like either c4 immediately or even king to d4 here is the best move, getting the king in the center. And remember, even with an extra pawn, you want to activate your king and prevent your opponent's king from infiltrating into your position. So here it looks like b6 is the best move according to the computer. And now c4, pushing the unopposed pawn. And now we have, I'll just play out the best moves according to the computer. The king grabbing the opposition, but now this allows b4 here, and then a6, and now the computer recommends, let's see, c5 check. And here, instead of capturing right away, the computer recommends moving the king over to c6 here, which keeps the king out. But the problem is now we have capture, and interestingly enough, instead of capturing immediately, it looks like the computer likes h6 the best here. And then after h4 to kind of lock down these pawns, h5, and now Let's see, a4 to keep the king from harassing this pawn. And finally, king captures. So pretty crazy what the computer is recommending there. And now king to d5, just moving in here even further into the position. And king to c7. But at this point, let's see, it looks like the computer prefers king to e6. Now white can move over here and pick off these undefended pawns because black is kind of tied down over here. So the computer recommends king to c8, which is kind of crazy. I mean, I guess we'll go ahead and play that and see what the computer is thinking. But now the game has jumped up to plus 15. So if we go back, the computer still recommends king to c8 is best. So let's take a look at c6 here. Well, even with this, plus 15, white is just winning. And it looks like, let's see, king to e5. The computer is maybe a little bit confused, but white can go ahead and just start picking off pawns. So after that, we have king to d6, but then white just starts gobbling up these pawns. I mean, I guess he could go here to protect this one, but after this one being captured, now we have what? If king to f7, well then, you know, there could be a problem with this right here. Capture, capture, and you have this extra pawn over here, this outside passed pawn, and you know, white is just winning now. Because if the pawn goes over here to stop this, the king can march over here. Let's say, I don't know, he heads over for this pawn. You know, white could also just march this pawn up. So you get the idea. You want to be able to use your extra pawn to your advantage and push it forward. Now you have to watch out what I mentioned earlier. If you have, let's see, I'll reset up or set up a little different position here. Let's say the pawns are even on one side of the board. But, or actually, most of the time, it may end up being more of this kind of setup in the end game. And if you have an extra pawn over here, but it's something like this, well then you have this extra pawn, but you're not able to do as much with that at the moment because you don't have a pawn over here on the C file that you can push forward and knock this pawn out and then try and push your B pawn. So this is something to be aware of. If you have doubled pawns like this, you could still have an extra pawn, but the two pawns are blocking it. So that's something to be aware of with an extra pawn, where you might not be able to press forward and get an advantage. So if we put the kings in here, let's see. I don't know, we'll put that there and that there. Here, it is still showing that white is winning. Let me back the kings up and see if that makes any difference. If we go here. Now that says that the game is just even here. Because white would have to maybe stay over here and try and keep the black king from coming down and picking off pawns. And black may also have to keep white from marching over here and grabbing these pawns. You know, so here it would be even. But it's interesting, if I move forward, now the evaluation swings here in white's favor. And that's just because the white king has managed to get further into black's position, and it will be harder for him to defend his pawns back here. All right, well, before the video drags on too long, the theme of this video was to use your extra pawn in the end game to try and push forward for an advantage, especially if you can trade pawns off. So if we had something like this, now we see the evaluation really jumps in white's favor. So if it's white to move here, one more time I'll show you. Let's see, it looks like white has many good moves here, either f3, f4, or c4. So if we immediately play this and then capture, and now we have king captures. Well, now the computer recommends that the black king kind of jump over here to the king side, but then this pawn would just start marching up the board. And it looks like it's even worse if the king jumps over here. Well, then you have b5. And if the king tries to stop this pawn, well, now you just have this and you're picking off the other one as well. So very dangerous if you can get that extra pawn in the end game, especially if it's unopposed, and you can get your king in there to help push that extra pawn. And white could just pick this off, and he could ignore these pawns and just run over here to the queen side. So let's say, I don't know, we had something like this. Well, then white could pick that off. The king would have to move. Let's see. The computer actually recommends this, but then you can just capture. And now king to b7. But the king will move and then just start pushing these pawns here, and white would really be winning. All right, I'll end the video there for today. I hope you enjoyed this extra pawn endgames video in the Chess Beginner to Winner series. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions. Also, any requests, if there's something you really want to see or learn about in chess, I will try to get to that request. I may be a little bit longer in getting to requests, leading up to the holiday season. But as the new year begins, I should be able to get to many requests. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video and have a super chess day. Thank you, everyone.